say it's time for more AC/DC, because this discography needs to continue. So let's flick the switch back on this discography. Hey, yeah. I'll just stick with reviewing albums instead of comedy. Yeah, so I'm sure a few of you are watching this and you'll be thinking, ugh, 80s AC/DC. Wow. This is going to be an enjoyable part to go through. You could have just done Bond, you could have just done the classic Brown as well, but no. You're going to have to go all the way, and I am going to have to go all the way with this discography. But Flick of the Switch isn't an album you should roll your eyes at. Not at all. I mean, we all know they went downhill from Back in Black, but regarding this album, do not lump this in with some of their 80s tosh. This is, honestly, I would say this band's single most underrated album. It's a thoroughly enjoyable record full of some of Brian's best tunes with the band. Not Back in Black too good, but a worthwhile listen and a good addition to any AC/DC fans' collection. Well, for those about to rock, definitely showed the band going a more commercial, poppier way with a clear emphasis on trying to be as commercial as possible, the riffs lacking crunch and feeling a bit more melodic. Here, they steer away from the sound on For Those About to Rock and create a far more groove-laden, bluesy album that feels naturally far more Bon musically. And while I would say as a whole this is not an AC/DC album that necessarily has any classic standout tracks, it just has consistently good ones. A song like Guns for Hire, it's hard to deny the greatness of it if you're an AC/DC fan of the Brian era. I mean, it just has such an awesome, catchy chorus, one of the better guitar solos on it, and we'll be addressing the guitar solos in a little bit on this album. It's just simple, but definitely has more of that Bon and sort of Back in Black feel, crunchier, harder guitars and energy to it that just made them so great. I think part of this is down to they parted ways with Mutt Lange on production, and instead who did they get to produce it? Well, Angus and Malcolm take the reins, and while this would lead to ruin with the next couple of albums, here it works well, and they definitely go back to an older style of production, I would say sort of to the sort of pre-Mutt Lange production. Though I do think the best example of what this album is about really is the opening track, Rising Power. This song is so groovy that Billy Gibbons could have written the riff, and it shows the band move away, as I said before, from the uber melodic approach of the previous record, back to the bones of the band, before going back to the commercial approach on subsequent records, but that's beside the point of the moment. Well, this isn't as tremendous an opening as, well, the openers from the last three, I mean, but the openers from the last three have been pretty epic, to be honest, so let's not hold it against this album. This little song does hold its own quite well, delivering the raw thrill and exhilaration that AC/DC do best. The solo, tremendous, definitely a real highlight from the album. I suppose we must talk about the solo. It's weird, the solo on this album just isn't very good generally. In fact, sometimes Malcolm's rhythm guitar, I'd say, overshadows it at times. I would say the issue is that just a lot of the solos aren't particularly memorable. They really focus around fairly standard bluesy noodling and don't do anything half as interesting as solos on previous albums. But some other people have noted this as well, and it definitely appears a little lazy maybe on AC/DC's part, I'm afraid to say. Though the strength of this album, it really just is in the consistency, particularly the first 8 songs. Wonderful examples of AC/DC era, sorry, Brian era AC/DC. You have the anthemic Flick of the Switch, slower, bluesier, nervous shakedown, which in hindsight kind of reminds me of the riff from Rock or Bust from the new album. Just saying. Or you have the explosive House on Fire. And these they do bloody well, and yes, while they all do fall into that nicely established little AC/DC cliche box, it still creates one of the best albums of the Brian era. And as I said before, I will say again, a thoroughly enjoyable AC/DC listen to some of the best riffs and vocals from this period. Now, as I said, it's not Back in Black 2, so of course there are some weaknesses, and they're mainly tacked towards the end. The two main weaknesses, well, to be honest, we may as well just talk about the last track, because that is, it's awful, let's be frank, Brain Shake. It's it's the worst AC/DC track up to this point, probably. I'm trying to think, I would say it's probably the worst AC/DC track up to this point. It's drag, I mean, the riff is weak, as someone, I don't know, it's just weak, to be honest. I can't even think of a freaking simile for it. And to us, it's kind of annoying. The whole song is so unbelievably unremarkable that it's unremarkable. They take mediocre to such new heights that I honestly if they just couldn't be asked writing this song, so I can't be asked thinking of anything imaginative to say about it. It kind of irritates me. Still, even with Brain Shake, this is one of my favourite albums from the band. This is their last very good album for a long time. How long? How many albums will this drought last? Well, we'll just have to see. But this is an 8 out of 10, thoroughly deserving on its solid album, great rock and roll tunes. This has been TheAIbumMan. Thanks for watching, and as usual, long live rock and roll.